5 a.m. in New York City, 10 a.m. in London. Good morning, I'm Bonnie Quinn with your Bloomberg Brief. Let's get you set up for the day. The US strikes Iran for a ninth day, targeting military sites and communications networks. Brent crude hovers around $90 a barrel. The UK gets another new leader. Andy Burnham set to become the next Prime Minister, the seventh in just over a decade. And the rout that sent chip stocks into a bear market takes a pause ahead of a string of big tech earnings this week. Let's get a check on markets around the world, though. We, of course, had a holiday in Korea on Friday and it's a holiday in Japan today. Winnie Su has the latest from Asia. Winnie.
Yeah, good morning, Bonnie. We are seeing Asian stocks under a bit of pressure today. As you just mentioned, Korea is back from a holiday on Friday, so a bit of a catch down there after that broad sell-off in tech stocks on Friday. So we are seeing Kospi here leading declines in Asia, while on the other hand, we are seeing the bright side is in the tech stocks in Hong Kong. So the real question investors are asking right now is whether these cheaper and more efficient Chinese AI models are raising some concerns when it comes to the massive AI spending from the US hyperscalers ahead of their earnings. Now we flip the board and take a look at the tech stocks in China, because here we have Alibaba really driving gains after the company also previewed its Quen model, and that is, according to the company, is just second to a Fable 5 model from Anthropic. So lots of excitement there. On the other hand, the losers really is in the likes of Zhipu and Minimax as they face further pressure and competition as they have to prove their advanced capabilities as well.
So much happening in Asia. Winnie, thank you so much. Now let's take a look at Europe. Now across most of Europe, we're actually fractionally higher. We're concentrating though on the UK, where the FTSE 100 is down about 0.4%. Mostly the backdrop is oil. Brent crude was around $90 a barrel until just a few minutes ago. It's off its highs. The Iranians did say they had received communication from the US mediators, and that seems to have taken some of the sting out of this market. But basically, this is going to be setting the tone. You also have gilt yields just a little bit higher. Now, they've been rising in accordance with yields globally, right? But we also have Andy Burnham coming in as Prime Minister. Keir Starmer will be making his final speech at 10 Downing Street in just more than an hour's time. And we have sterling just a little bit higher now as we expect to hear a little bit more about what policies we're going to be getting from Andy Burnham and also his cabinet picks throughout the week. Here in the United States, we are seeing futures pointed higher as well after that massive tech sell-off in the last few sessions. We'll see if this continues to hold. Once again, you can only imagine that hostilities escalating in the Middle East will impact this market, but then we are into the bulk of earnings season now as well. So as you can see, NASDAQ 100 futures looking for that index to bounce back after those massive sell-offs. We're though within 2% of our high on the S&P 500, it should be pointed out. Let's take a look at yields. Markets still pricing in about 2 hikes by the first quarter of 2027, and any Fed speak that we've been hearing does underline that. Of course, all of this escalation and heightened oil prices, that's adding to inflation fears as well. So as you can see, we're tending higher, but really no movement. We're at 417 on the 2-year and still just under 508 on the 30-year yield here in the US. Let's get to some individual market movers now, and for that we'll go to London and Chloe Melley.
Good morning, Bonnie. We have the chip stocks back in the green this morning after the recent sell-off, with some modest gains across the board, and investors really looking towards those big tech earnings throughout this week to see where the AI trade goes next. And so we'll see if there's going to be more momentum or more volatility there. Moving on to polypeptide, which is up this morning. This is a contract drug maker which is in the green after getting bought by Samsung Biologics in a $1.8 billion deal. This is something that will give Samsung Biologics more access to peptide manufacturing facilities, which is going to be very important as we see this growing demand for peptide medicines. And finally, over in Europe, we have Ryanair falling this morning after a huge drop in profits due to weaker demand because of that geopolitical uncertainty and also those higher fuel costs. And that's really starting to weigh on the company and doesn't bode well for the rest of that airline sector, which will be reporting also later on in the season.
All right, Chloe, thank you so much. Chloe Melley will be back a little bit later in the hour. Also coming up this hour, Meera Chandan of JPMorgan on the outlook for the dollar. Let's start with the rapid escalation in the war on Iran. The US completing its 9th straight day of attacks on Iranian military sites. Iran says it has received some proposal from mediators. Bloomberg Middle East breaking news editor Patrick Sykes joins us now from Istanbul. This really helped the market. We came off $2 on the prompt month futures for Brent. Patrick, and I'm curious, what was in this proposal, or what exactly might mediators be saying that they haven't been saying up to now?
Yeah, this was a comment just over an hour ago from the foreign ministry spokesman in Tehran. He declined to go into any further detail about what those proposals were, but he said they were through some mediators. So we presume Pakistan, which has been the main mediator throughout, but could also include countries like Qatar, that's also had a role, maybe even Turkey. But it really remains to be seen what exactly that might include. The other bit of movement on the diplomatic front was the same official saying that Iran's interior ministry would be visiting Pakistan later today. He said it was about bilateral issues, but I think it's safe to assume that he's also going to be there conveying some kind of message about the state of play in the war and these potential proposals to find a way out of it.
And casualties are mounting, Patrick. We're at 17 US casualties now, and we don't fully know how many in Iran, right? But that's also adding pressure on both sides.
Yeah, I think over 50 in Iran and over 500 injured as of the last count over the weekend. But yeah, those US casualties in particular over the weekend, I think, is what we saw prompting that escalation and the initial reaction in the oil price this morning before it came off after those diplomatic comments. But it has seemed like over the past couple of days, the strikes have been escalating. The range of targets has been widening. The US focused, of course, on Iran's southern coast along the Persian Gulf, saying that that's to limit Iran's ability to target shipping around the Strait of Hormuz, but also a lot of dual use and civilian infrastructure, roads, bridges, and that kind of thing. And yesterday we saw a still under construction nuclear power plant also being attacked. So for the first time in a while, we kind of dipped into the nuclear issue, after so many months where all the attention has been focused on the Strait of Hormuz. I think that was a reminder that even if they can resolve that shipping, that seafaring issue, they're going to have an equally thorny issue around Iran's nuclear program to be negotiated afterwards.
Yeah, that bears noting. Patrick, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Patrick Sykes there from Istanbul. Andy Burnham set to become the UK's Prime Minister today. He promises to restore a sluggish economy and ensure political stability. Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden is outside 10 Downing Street. So what can we expect from his speech today, at least? Never mind what's in store for us this week, Lizzie.
Well, it's absolutely heaving here in Downing Street, Vonnie. We've got the world's press stacked on top of each other, waiting for the two speeches that we'll get, Starmer out and Burnham in. And it's really a remarkable journey for Burnham, from Mayor of Greater Manchester to Makerfield MP to Labour leader. No election. He's a takeover Prime Minister, the 11th of the past 19 to be like that. But he's got 90% of Labour MPs backing him, so a remarkably bloodless coup. In terms of the choreography of what we can expect later on today, well, in just a couple of hours or less, we'll see that podium. We'll have Starmer coming out with the podium. He'll head to Buckingham Palace to formally tender his resignation. King Charles will then ask Burnham to form a government. Burnham will come back here and make his speech setting out his priorities, and then the ministers will come filing up Downing Street as Burnham appoints his cabinet. So we'll know the new enemies, those who haven't got jobs, and hopefully we should get a bit more of an idea of the policy direction, but still a lot of questions for this new government, Bonnie.
Yeah, what will be in Andy Burnham's in-tray? I mean, he has to differentiate himself from Keir Starmer, but essentially, he'll be trying to find some other ways to thread this needle, right, in the UK?
Exactly. He's got to deal with the same problems that Starmer faced, like reinvigorating productivity, getting on top of the welfare bill, controlling immigration to fend off the threat from Reform UK. But as you say, to justify the need for change, he also needs to differentiate himself from Keir Starmer. So he's made devolution a priority, given that he's the former mayor of Greater Manchester. He's also talked about new drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea, something President Trump's latched onto already, although he might be over-interpreting what Burnham would be doing. and he's taking public control of Thames Water. That's something that we're expecting to come up in the first few days. But we've reported that Treasury officials today are going to put on Burnham's desk a load of very bleak economic forecasts for lower growth, higher inflation, maybe oil prices going as high as $150 a barrel because of the escalation in the US-Iran war, and therefore higher interest rates. And on top of that, Burnham saying that he's going to stick to the fiscal rules and stick to the 2024 Labour manifesto, so not pulling on the three main levers of tax, income tax, VAT and payrolls. So he's in the same fiscal bind. He really is going to have to show with his new Chancellor, whoever that may be, how he's going to fund all of this new change when he's on a shoestring just like Starmer.
Exactly. Lizzie, thank you so much. Looking forward to your coverage. Bloomberg's Lizzie Burden there outside 10 Downing Street. And for more updates on the change in leadership in the UK, you can type in TLIV GO on your terminals. Now to all the top stories trending on the terminal this morning. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Chinese President Xi Jinping remains on track to visit the US in September. Rubio's remarks come days after President Trump claimed China interfered with the 2020 US election. US intelligence agencies have previously debunked those claims. Alibaba launched a preview version of its flagship Twen 3.8 Max model. It claims that the latest version is comparable to leading frontier AI models. And Spain wins the World Cup finals, defeating Lionel Messi's Argentina in a 1-0 extra-time win. Substitute Ferran Torres scored the lone goal after Spain dominated possession for most of the game. The match took place before 80,000 fans at New Jersey's MetLife Stadium. Coming up, Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg talks about Trump's help with sales, plans to boost production, and the flying economy. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Vonnie Quinn in New York. Boeing is working through a supply bottleneck as it plans to ramp up production of its top jets, with hopes to make more than 40,000 planes in the next 20 years. Bloomberg's Guy Johnson spoke with Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg at the Farnborough Air Show.
We're turning the corner. I tell my team we haven't quite finished turning the corner. We've got more work to do, but I am pleased with the progress so far. We're ramping up production across many of our product lines. Markets are very strong. So our backlog is very, very strong. So our story is really focusing on executing that backlog.
Okay. The administration, the White House, has given you massive support over the last 18 months. The President certainly had your back. Do you think the company would be where it is now, that kind of progress that you've made, without that kind of support?
Well, I think the execution focus is really on us to go improve our overall performance, build trust with our stakeholders, restore trust with the regulator. And I think that's more what Boeing has done for themselves. The President has been very helpful in sales campaigns. Balancing trade, the best way to do that is buy a bunch of airplanes. And so we've been a beneficiary of that. He's been very helpful to the whole aerospace industry.
So you're in a good place right now.
Yes.
So what's now?
Well, we still have to ramp up higher. So we're at 47 a month now on the 737. We have aspirations to get to 63 a month rate. We're at 8 a month rate on the 787. We want to go to 10 later in the year and then higher next year. So we're investing in new capacity, new facilities, so that we can continue this rate ramp. The backlog is there. The market is strong. So it's all about delivering more airplanes.
You say the backlog is there, the market is strong. You like the economy right now? The consumer looks good, particularly in the States. The consumer wants to fly. The airlines are certainly saying that. But you've got Brent this morning at $90 a barrel. You've got the ongoing conflict with Iran. Kind of just give me your flavour of what you're seeing in front of you in terms of what the macro picture looks like.
It's a super resilient market, and while we always see perturbations here or there, regional perturbations, which we're seeing now, we forecast that the market's going to continue to be strong. Traffic continues to grow. We just came out with the new forecast for overall aircraft growth, and we see 44,000 airplanes in the next 20 years. So this isn't a market that moves quickly, because you have to make orders for aircraft well in advance, and we think that the demand is set for our aircraft going forward.
Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg speaking with Bloomberg opening trade anchor Guy Johnson there. Joining us now from Farnborough is Bloomberg Space and Aviation Managing Editor Benedict Kamel. Lots of optimism there from Kelly Ortberg. Benny, is that the general sense around Farnborough, or does it really depend on who you're speaking with?
Well, it does seem that right now the mood is pretty upbeat here in Farnborough. We're getting the first orders probably later today, and there's really a feeling that this is a good market. The demand is strong. The U.S. consumer, we heard it from Kelly Ortberg, is still flying. There's demand out there, but at the same time, there is that sense of what's going to happen to fuel prices, how will that shape the future of aviation. And if you talk to executives here, they will tell you, well, one way to counter that is to buy the latest kit, to buy the more fuel-efficient aircraft. So they have their sales pitch here, which in some ways is supported by what's going on with fuel. And the message that we're hearing from Airbus, the message that we're hearing from Boeing is buy the latest planes. Those are the fuel-efficient models, and that's what they're coming here for. It's a big commercial event. It's also a big sort of defense event, so we'll be hearing about that, the European rearmament efforts that are happening, and what role companies over here in Europe, but also US companies, are playing, how the partnership will play out going forward. So it's a mix of commercial, of politics, of defense playing out over the next couple of days.
Guy, put it to Kelly Ortberg that the White House has been giving Boeing massive support. Is there a sense that Boeing has a little bit of an unfair advantage with President Trump, basically, as Ortberg said, making its sales pitch for it?
Yes, I mean, that is certainly the sense that, and Trump himself has called himself the greatest salesman for Boeing. He says he's single-handedly managed to give the company about 1,000 aircraft sales over the last year and a half. Airbus have quietly lamented the fact that they do not have that kind of support. They don't have that kind of person over here in Europe who would have the same sort of power to get deals over the line. Nevertheless, you know, this is always the same tit for tat that we see at these air shows, and you will see Airbus pulling in their fair degree of sales here. You will see the leasing companies place orders. You will see some airlines placing orders. So overall, it usually balances. They balance each other out. We're looking at maybe 500 plus orders across the line, both for Boeing and for Airbus. But no doubt that Trump has played an important role and has really put his finger on the scales for Boeing.
Ortberg telling us that 47 a month now is the production level on the 737. They hope to get to 63. And on the 787, it's 8 now. They want to get to 10. Are those realistic figures, Benny?
Well, they're going slowly, and I think that's one of the lessons that the company has learned from the crises that they've been in over the last couple of years. Let's make sure that we are ready. Let's make sure the market is ready. Let's make sure that the finances are ready before we take that next step. And I think Ortberg is a more cautious, should we say, leader. He's not as aggressive, maybe as some people in the market would like, but he's as I said, learned that lesson. He's understanding that it's better to be slow and to be right than to rush into something and then things start falling apart. So they are at 47 now for the 737 model. That's their best-selling plane. They are at 8 and want to go higher on the 787. And one plane that is still not in the market, but people are waiting for, is the next generation 777, which is their largest wide-body model. So questions will come up here. When will that go to the market? People hope that it'll be in the middle of next year, that customers will finally receive that plane. Lufthansa is the launch customer for that. So in some ways, the conversation is already turning to sort of what's next in terms of the next generation aircraft. We heard Kelly Ortberg speak about that a little bit with Guy Johnson this morning, saying it's probably going to be at the tail end of next decade. So these are investments that take a lot of money and a lot of time, because these planes tend to be in the market for decades, and you need to get them right.
Yes, and it's not just the plane makers at Farnborough, the airlines, and of course the airport operators are there as well. Can't wait to hear more. That's Bloomberg's Benedict Kamel at the Farnborough Air Show. And do tune in to Open Interest at 9:30 a.m. New York time for an interview with the Airbus CEO, Guillaume Faury. Coming up, a look at what's making headlines in your front page news. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg Brief, I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York, and it's time now for your front page news. First up, the New York Times reporting President Trump says the luxury jet gifted to him by Qatar will be taken out of service to be so-called maxed out. The plane will get additional defensive capabilities to match the standards of older jets used for presidential travel. The president says he plans to take the jet with him for his presidential library when he leaves office. Next up, the Wall Street Journal reporting the FDA has walked back its finding that Taylor Farms was the source of the Cyclospora parasite. Taylor Farms says the FDA has apologized. The agency said it was yet to identify the presence of the parasite on lettuce samples from the company despite recent tests. And the Financial Times reporting Morgan Stanley has emerged as Wall Street's chief architect of the financing structures underpinning the AI boom. The FT says the bank has devised new debt and equity models funneling tens of billions of dollars into the massive build-out of data centers. Coming up, we speak to Meera Chandan of JPMorgan on her US dollar outlook. This is Bloomberg. It's 5:30 a.m. in New York City, 10:30 a.m. in London. Good morning, I'm Bonnie Quinn with your Bloomberg Brief. Let's get you set up for the day. The US strikes Iran for a ninth day, targeting military sites and communications networks. Brent crude now hovering around $88 a barrel. The UK getting another new leader. Andy Burnham set to become the next Prime Minister, the seventh in just over a decade. And the rout that sent chip stocks into a bear market takes a pause ahead of a big week for big tech earnings. Let's begin with oil, because a ninth straight day of strikes on targets in Iran, and just a few minutes ago, a little communication from Iran to the effect that the US and mediators had reached out is causing Brent to trade off its highs. Now, earlier it was trading above $90 a barrel. We're at 88 now, and it's actually turned lower. Just under 82 for WTI, but as you can see, European gas futures continue to clamber higher. We're approaching $60 now on European gas futures. And in terms of gasoline in the United States, we're back above $4 a gallon, and that has inflation concerns back at the ready. And for that, we'll look to yields. As we can see, yields have been climbing. Not too much movement today, but we are seeing the two-year yield still around 4.18 and the 30-year yield still around 5.07. You saw their futures pointed higher as well after some big sell-offs in the tech sphere. We'll be keeping a very close eye on what's happening in Asia. Some more models coming out of China, and also, of course, a huge amount of earnings this week. All the big hyperscalers, bar Apple and Alphabet, they've been doing worse than the median stock in the S&P 500, even if they've been doing better than some of the Magnificent Seven. Let's get to some individual pre-market movers now with this Monday's Fair. We have Chloe Melly in London.
Good morning, Vonnie. We are seeing some small gains across that chip sector this morning in pre-market trading after the recent sell-off in the sector. And investors are really going to be looking to those big tech earnings, starting with Alphabet on Wednesday, to see where the AI trade goes next and whether we'll see this renewed volatility in the industry, or if those chip stocks are going to be able to get that momentum again. So that's going to be the big question this week, but we are in the green this morning. Moving on to fashion, we've got Urban Outfitters up also in the green this morning. Oh, it's actually down now, but it was up earlier when it had Goldman Sachs analysts upgrading the stock, saying that there was going to be a brand recovery that was going to boost profitability. But now we are seeing some weakness in the shares. And finally, Ryanair is also in the red this morning after recording a big drop in profit over the fiscal first quarter that was due to some weaker demand because of geopolitical instability and also those higher fuel costs because of disruption to oil flows. And so this is not boding very well for the rest of the aviation sector. And we are down more than 7% for Ryanair in London this morning.
All right, that's quite the drop. Chloe, thank you so much. Chloe Melly there. Meera Chandan of JPMorgan, optimistic on the US dollar's outlook despite geopolitical risk. She writes, quote, a bullish dollar, bullish carry portfolio orientation looks well placed to absorb another inflationary geopolitical shock. She's co-head of Global FX Strategy at JPMorgan and joins us now. Meera, thank you so much for joining. It does seem that the dollar generally strengthening has been, the trajectory of travel and that pretty much everything is good for the US dollar right now, from, as you say, geopolitical risk to maybe market instability in Asia. What are the challenges that the dollar might have to meet in the coming months?
Thanks a lot, Bonnie, for having me on this morning. Look, the dollar is generally speaking very well placed for the current macro backdrop, one in which oil prices, energy prices are higher. Obviously, it's an oil exporter now, so it really puts it in much greater advantage relative to Asia and relative to Europe. In terms of challenges, the key issue, I think, they're more subtle issues than just energy prices. The first one is there's a lot that's been priced in for the Fed already. We've got about 40 basis points of hikes, roughly speaking, priced in for the Fed in the coming months. And if the US data doesn't really corroborate that pricing and say the Fed is on hold for a long period of time, that could be a challenge and a headwind that the dollar might have to sort of contend with. I don't think that's necessarily something that's going to materialize, but obviously it is a data contingent story. And then the second thing is if energy prices do stabilize here or do start to come off, what we're starting to see is growth outside the US is starting to pick up as well. So it's going to feel very much like the middle of the dollar smile dynamics all over again, particularly the Fed's not hiking. So our own bias, as you know, is more a bullish stance on the dollar, but it is contingent on the Fed delivering these more hawkish outcomes that the market is now pricing to.
Well, we're certainly continuing to get Fed speak that leans hawkish, right, Meera? But if that does change, or as you say, if the data comes in to not corroborate some of the fears that these Fed speakers have, would that cause an instant reaction in the US dollar, and would it be a material one?
Yeah, so look, I wouldn't understate the Fed hawkishness, because if you look at our Hawk Tough score index, we have an NLP-based pricing that ranks these Fed speeches. The hawkishness that we've seen is probably the most pronounced since 2022. So this is a big deal, and we're putting a lot of weight on that. But if we say, for example, get another soft CPI print, or if the core PCE doesn't quite, is not quite as firm as we thought it would be, then that could, take out about 15, 20 basis points from the Fed terminal rate, which is worth about a couple % in the dollar. I don't think these are large moves in the grand scheme of things, but considering the fact that the dollar has been pretty much in a range for multiple quarters now, I think tells you that, you're going to move potentially to the lower end of the range in case the US data doesn't corroborate.
You mentioned that the dollar is well placed versus the energy importing low yielders, so particularly the euro, the Swiss franc, and some of the Asian currencies. Is that something that's going to continue on even if we see some kind of resolution to the Iran problem within the next few months?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one part of the call, I think, here is how quickly does energy and oil prices how much do they really mean revert? How much does the supply come back online? And I think the view out here is, generally speaking, even if we do get the Strait opening up, and as we've seen, that's not really a straight line, but even if we do see that opening up, oil prices can be quite sticky because it's going to take time for inventory builds, both on the gas and the oil prices front. So I think it's going to be steady pressure coming, pressure coming off, but it's not going to be really a collapse in the dollar here. So to me, the big game change, it's easy to sort of get caught up in the minutiae, but the big game changer here relative to, say, 6 months ago is, back then we were thinking the Fed's either going to be on hold or they're potentially cutting rates. And now with the way that the US data has improved, with the change in the Fed's hawkishness, the point we're making is that it's asymmetric on the upside because the Fed could be either on hold or could be hiking rates, which gives the dollar itself a very different asymmetry around it.
Meera, what did you think when you saw the 30-year yield climb to 5.07? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I guess it's not that massive, right? But it is still relative to where we've been trading recently, quite the blowout for the 30-year, the longer end of the yield curve. How much is that going to impact dollar dynamics, not in the immediate term, but more intermediate and far out term?
Look, the long end yields do matter. And generally speaking, if you look at measures of term premium, if the curve is steepening too much, yield curve steepening too much, and it's not explained by what the central bank is doing, that usually carries with it a discount on the currency. So usually all else equal would be a dollar weaker story. And you're seeing that in places like Japan, for example, where the currency has been weakening, or sterling from time to time, where you've seen the fiscal premium come back in. In the case of the dollar this time around, it's less of a concern because the Fed is actually responding in a very hawkish way. And so when you do start to see long end yields go up, that could be related to fiscal or not, but it's also in large part explained by what is going on with the Fed repricing and the Fed hawkishness. So I think that part of the equation, the fact that the Fed is hawkish, is really what should be more dollar supportive. And that's what we're focusing on rather than just what's going on with long end yields. That's not the case for Japan and may not be the case for UK later on in the year.
I was just going to ask, Meera, obviously dollar dynamics are, what's moving a lot of things right now, but there are still, individual factors in the UK and in Japan in particular that might impact those currencies. So what's more important to sterling, the new Andy Burnham policies or the Bank of England and what it does? And also on Japan, do we see intervention? Do we see the need for intervention anytime soon again?
Sure. So sterling, big day, obviously Andy Burnham coming in as PM today. There's been a lot of noise around how the fiscal situation in the UK is progressively going to worsen, how that's going to be negative for sterling. However, our view has been that sterling is going to be in a bit of a policy void, if you will, for a few months, at least till you get up to the budget in autumn. But that's not good. Details won't be announced till October, November. And what that essentially means is that sterling in the interim is going to trade off of what is more tangible, i.e. what's going on with growth right now. How is the BOE going to respond? And what we're seeing there is, of course, growth is surprising to the upside. It's tracking better than the BOE's forecast and the consensus forecast. Sterling within the DM space is a high yielder. So I think those combination of things has kept sterling fairly resilient. We've been more bullish on the sterling side. I think it's been a great out of consensus call for us. But I don't think that changes anytime soon, even though the longer term prospects are obviously quite concerning. On yen, intervention is probably not something that's going to turn the tide on yen. I think the Japanese authorities have learned that, particularly if the Fed is potentially hiking, and it's a broader dollar environment. Longer, it's not going to turn it. So I think they're going to have to look at some other policies, and they are looking at things like the pension fund, etc., to try to stem currency.
Exactly. We've had a flurry of announcements, or at least encouragements out of Japan. Meera, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Wonderful stuff with Meera Chandan there of JPMorgan. Now to other top stories trending on the terminal this morning. Andy Burnham set to become the UK's 7th Prime Minister since Brexit in 2016. Burnham make affordability a key campaign issue as he inherits a struggling economy. He vows to make intangible and tangible improvements to everyday life. Hong Kong Stock Exchange is considering extending equity trading hours to align with most global markets. It's mulling multiple options, including scrapping the hour-long lunch break and adding an after-hour session to catch early US activity. Major brokers and trading firms have been notified. Adidas sold 4 times as many jerseys and twice as many soccer balls as they did at the last World Cup. In an email to Bloomberg, Adidas said they expect event-related sales to reach around €1.5 billion. 14 teams wore Adidas gear, including both teams in the World Cup finals. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Bonnie Quinn in New York. The U.S. completed a 9th day of strikes that President Trump said were, quote, in honor of 3 American service members who were killed in Iranian strikes. Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska joins us now from Washington. Trump has been pretty silent, Kasia, on Iran and on his strategy. The death toll now, though, hitting 17. He'll need to make some public comments at some point, won't he?
President Trump indeed stayed relatively quiet over the weekend, especially on Saturday. On Sunday, he mostly focused on celebrating the World Cup, and he made a variety of comments, including, for example, about affordability and praising one of the grocery chains here in the U.S. for lowering prices. But he also did address this loss of life. He said that those Americans who lost their life fighting are patriots and that they died so that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. The U.S. Central Command was posting over the weekend on X and said that it continues attacks against Iran, mainly to make sure that the country is not able to target shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, but also to destroy the forces that targeted the American lives. So as you mentioned, there was escalation of this tit for tat over the weekend, but we also just got some news that Iran has received some signals of mediation. Those two mediators, of course, being mainly Pakistan and Qatar. So we'll see where this leads. But for now, the two sides insist on their respective point of view. Iran wants to make sure that it is able to control the Strait of Hormuz, whereas the U.S. wants some ships to continue to go through.
And just on the domestic front, Troy Jackson seems to be on track to secure Graham Plattner's Democratic U.S. Senate nomination spot. What's next?
So you are taking me to the midterms here in November when Democrats want to take control of at least one of the chambers, perhaps the Senate, and that's where Maine looks a little bit vulnerable. Republicans have this senator there, Susan Collins, who has been attacked in Maine for aligning with President Trump. Several of Trump's policies are not that popular in Maine, so Democrats are trying to take that spot. But the initial candidate that looked strong there obviously went down after facing sexual assault accusations from ex-girlfriend. That was Graham Plattner. That is no longer a candidate. So Democrats are looking for a new one, and it could be Troy Jackson, who is also a very interesting personality. He used to be a Republican, but he switched to being a progressive.
All right, Kasia with the roundup from D.C. this Monday. That's Bloomberg's Kasia Klimashinska. Brent crude off its highs now after Iran's foreign minister said it had received proposals from mediators. Let's bring in Bloomberg's owner Ant in Dubai. We don't know what these proposals are, owner, but I am curious about the Strait of Hormuz and the situation there. Is there any traffic going through?
Well, Hormuz Strait, as of this morning, remains at a standstill, Voni. There is very little traffic, if at all, that is currently trackable. We know that at least one bulk carrier did make an attempt to cross the strait earlier this morning, as well as a liquefied petroleum gas tanker that we know is part of the so-called dark fleet that's been used by Iran for its exports. But otherwise, traffic through Hormuz is at a standstill, and we have seen many attacks on a number of commercial ships over the weekend, including on Sunday. And lately, in the latest development, we have seen a statement from the UK Navy that said another vessel, which it didn't say where it was coming from, was on fire after being hit by an unknown projectile. We know that ship is still on fire and it's adrift. The fire has yet to be extinguished. But overall, I think these attacks, including this one, underlines the danger facing the ships that are trying to make a passage through the Strait of Hormuz without the approval of or in coordination of Tehran.
Yeah, if they weren't moving before, certainly these strikes would be off-putting now. Owner, thank you so much. That's Bloomberg's owner Ant in Dubai. Now to the latest on the AI trade. Alibaba shares popping after it launched a preview version of its latest model, coming as China catches up to the US in the AI race, with Moonshot AI seen as a serious competitor to OpenAI and Anthropic. With us now is Bloomberg senior strategist Neil Campling. So what differentiates all these models, Neil? We have a new one now from Alibaba. It's an iteration of its previous trend model, and obviously we had the news just before the weekend about Kimi K3.
We did indeed. I think what to look at the comparisons of these. Now, clearly, there's been a wake-up call to some of the US frontier models by China catching up quickly. The Moonshot Kimi 3 has got something called we look at these called parameters, these parameter models. Now, the one announced last Friday was 2.8 trillion parameters model. The one from Alibaba, previewed over the weekend, is 2.4 trillion parameter model. Now, we haven't got their benchmark test yet. To give you a comparison, though, Claude Mythos is still way in front. It's believed to have about 10 trillion parameter models. So it's still ahead, but I think it's still just the fact that some of these Chinese models are coming out with very, very quick advances, which is surprising many people, I think, in space.
As I understand it, though, they might be using compute resources more efficiently, but they certainly need lots and lots of memory.
Yeah, it's a really, really great point. So with the 2.8 trillion that's used in the Kimi K3, it still needs 1.4 terabytes of memory, even when it's compressed. So still very memory intensive. And of course, we know that memory supply is still restricted for quite some time until the capex can be unleashed. So actually, there's a chance that that some of these models being very memory heavy may stop some of the advances from the Chinese models, which again is why we need some of these benchmark testing to be released. And we should have more data from that from Moonshot and from Alibaba in the days ahead.
Yes, and we have to watch whether the US and China restrict technologies for each other, etc., etc. Lots to come. But Neil, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed on everything that's AI related. I do want to ask you about the IPO, though, the Moonshot IPO. So it is, again, an AI story, but it's also a capital market story. Why is Moonshot planning an IPO within the next 6 months?
I think it's partly because there's appetite for these models and investor demand, so you can come to the market quicker. Also, it's about the need for capital, clearly, because these are very capital-intensive businesses. And in fact, Moonshot over the weekend said they had to restrict some access because they had run out of compute, effectively. Now, just to give you a quick comparison, the latest stats are that Moonshot's at a $300 million annual revenue run rate. Anthropic is on an annual revenue run rate of $47 billion, just leaps ahead. Now, both these companies launched their first AI models in 2023. So that's just it. Moonshot's doing extremely well, but Anthropic, in terms of actual economics, are way, way ahead of where Moonshot are today.
Yeah, so any proceeds from an IPO would definitely help. Neil, thank you so much. Bloomberg Senior Strategist Neil Camping there. Coming up, we're going to get you set up for your trading week. This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Brief. I'm Vonnie Quinn in New York. Now a look at what's ahead this week. Well, we're going to get lots of big tech earnings. Alphabet, Tesla report on Wednesday, and Intel is out on Thursday. We're also going to get the ECB's latest rate decision on Thursday. And then data-wise, on Friday, we get new home sales numbers for June. Huge earnings week, though, so lots more earnings on deck as well this week, including AMC and Domino's right before the opening bell today. So here is your macro picture going into a fresh week. This is the oil picture. An hour ago, this would have been a lot higher. We did have communication from Iran, though, to say that mediators had been in touch, and that seems to have taken the edge off oil. Brent had been trading above $90. And by the way, in the US now, gasoline is back above $4 a gallon. And as you can see, European gas futures are feeling this escalation as well. In terms of what's going on equities-wise, we obviously had that big sell-off in the chip stocks, memory stocks last week. Nasdaq 100 futures are pointing to what could be a bounce back. We're seeing the US dollar index not do much of anything. Sterling a little stronger before Keir Starmer leaves his speech in about 15 minutes.